In the early hours of Monday morning, Episode 3 of the final series of Game of Thrones was broadcast in the UK. Called The Long Night, this is the most eagerly anticipated episode ever, the battle between the army of the dead and the Allied forces at Winterfell. But as soon as it had been broadcast, criticism emerged online from fans about one aspect of the show. And even though I know Game of Thrones cost millions of pounds to make, I can replicate roughly half of that episode using just my phone, because around half of it looked like this. An absolute black screen, some noise in the background, no fucking idea what's going on. I should say, I watched the repeat last night and someone at HBO has been doing some frantic editing, now it looks fine. But the guy responsible for it, the cinematographer called Fabian Wagner, he said the fault isn't with the broadcast, it's with the viewers, saying that most people don't know how to properly tune their TV sets. How old is his fucking TV that he has to tune it? They now come ready set up. I checked mine last night. The modes are standard, cinema and eco home. There isn't a fucking night vision version. Now I'm sure I could go into some drop down menu and alter the brightness myself, but I haven't had to do that for any other TV show. And apparently the decision for why it was all filmed so dark is because the battle was at night and the producers wanted it to look realistic. Now I love Game of Thrones, but I've never watched it because it's realistic. So let's just quickly break down the episode. Well, what light there was came from fires lit by Melisandre, the Red Woman, and she lit them using magic because she hasn't got a Zippo. One side you've got the army of the dead commanded by the White Walkers, but their main man, the Night King, a sort of Dungeons and Dragons version of Hitler, he wasn't there because he was flying in on Viserion, his reanimated zombie dragon. I'm meeting him mid-air for some combat. On Rhaegal is Jon Snow, who, as we know, has already been murdered once, was brought back to life as a sort of Night's Watch version of Jesus. And on Drogon, his love interest and his aunt, Daenerys Targaryen. Nothing remarkable about her other than she can control the dragons and she's impervious to fire, but they weren't enough to kill the Night King. They needed Arya Stark, Jon's sister, except she's not his sister because now we know Jon's real father is his girlfriend's dead older brother. But Arya has luckily been trained as an assassin and can change her face, and she went at the Night King with a dagger made of Valyrian steel, one of the few things that can kill White Walkers. And she was given this by her brother Bran, who was crippled at the end of the very first episode of Game of Thrones after being caught spying on the Lannister twins fucking each other, and since then he's become the three-eyed raven so he can see into the past and the future. And when Arya finally does stab the Night King, he turns into ice and explodes. So thank God the lighting was right on that, or it might have been unrealistic. The whole episode, though, wasn't what I expected. Like most people, I was expecting utter fucking bloodbath and most of the main characters getting wiped out. But as it happened, the only one I really felt sorry for was Jorah Mormont, Ian Glenn's character. Because he's dedicated his life to protecting Daenerys, Khaleesi, doing everything to keep her safe and to better her. And not once did she fuck him. And you know that's all he wanted. If she'd occasionally let him have a go on her, he'd have been happy, and it wouldn't have been a big deal, because he's been round the track enough times as it is. But no, she had to turn up banging her nephew. She'll regret that, because in a couple of weeks' time, when her army's getting twatted by Cersei Lannister's lot, she'll be thinking, if only I'd sucked him off occasionally, he might have had a bit more fight, and he'd still be here. But we're 3 episodes in, we're halfway through the final series. What's going to happen after it? Well, I'm quite lucky. If I want to see scores of the undead, mindless violence and semi-naked women, I live in Stoke-on-Trent. We call that Saturday night.